On this episode of Race Talk Revolution with Lane and Eugene, Ms. Barbara Major, community engagement specialist and veteran anti-racism organizer and activist, helps us understand how white supremacy often shows up where we don't expect it and how we can make sure that our anti-racism activities and efforts are not tainted by white supremacist ideals. This episode originally aired August 11th, 2021.
Yes, yes, yes. So let's get this party started. Woo-wee. Welcome back to Race Talk Revolution with Lane in Eugene. As you know, and as we say constantly, Race Talk Revolution is a platform where your voice matters. So check this out. Today, we kick off another 8-week series of Race Talk Revolution with Lane and Eugene. And we, of course, hope that you enjoyed your break. I know that, like you couldn't wait for us to be back. But we're glad to be with all of you this afternoon. But not only do we kick off another 8-week series, this commemorates, we've been doing this, Lane, we've been doing this for a year. We started a year ago this month. Man, it is such a wonderful, that is so very endearing to me. And it could not have been possible without all of you here. And that includes you folks who are here new for the first time. So I want to again welcome you, and I want to welcome to our new family members. We are so pleased to have you joining us today. And we hope that you will make yourselves at home here at Race Talk Revolution. Our topic title today is Building a Net That Works, helping people of color heal, grow, and thrive. And our guest today is the veteran anti-racism trainer and community organizer, Miss Barbara Major. And you will meet her in just a moment. Now, as always, our conversations, during our conversation today, we ask you to, please remain muted. You guys have been very good about that. And when we get to the Q&A, we will instruct you on how to raise your hand. So you've been with us, so you know how that goes, but I'm still going to go over that. And this is just always a friendly reminder that Race Talk Revolution is a loving, respectful, and inclusive platform designed to encourage constructive dialogue around tough issues pertaining to racial and social injustice. It is a safe space. It is a brave space for people of all backgrounds to share ideas and opinions. We explore the nuances of systemic racism, and we grow our anti-racism muscles. In our Race Talk community, we practice radically inclusive love. Even when we don't understand or agree with what's being said, we listen with respect, appreciation, and empathy. You see, it is our commitment that every person be encouraged, heard, appreciated, because in Race Talk Revolution with Lane and Eugene, every voice matters. And now my beautiful and powerful co-host, the Reverend Lane Cobb.
I love it when you say that. Thank you, Eugene. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again. And welcome. If you are joining us from our Facebook page, welcome. We are now live on Facebook.
Oh, yeah,
how about
we're
that?
live.
Yes. All right. So, folks, I am so pleased to have the privilege of introducing our guest speaker for today, Ms. Barbara Major. I met her at an Undoing Racism workshop I participated in, and I immediately knew that I wanted to invite her to join our platform. Ms. Barbara Major is a community organizer and trainer with over 30 years of experience in many local, national, and international community development efforts. This work includes everything from nurturing leadership development efforts within local communities to assisting institutions in developing strategies to deinstitutionalize racism. Originally trained in sociology, Barbara is a native of New Orleans and Franklinton, Louisiana. Her home base is Bright Moments Public Relations firm, where she specializes in community outreach. Until Hurricane Katrina, Ms. Major served as the chair of the St. Thomas Irish Channel Consortium, a nationally acclaimed model for holistic community and institutional transformation. For 12 years, she was executive director of the community-driven and controlled St. Thomas Health Clinic, which to this day continues to serve the greater New Orleans underserved and underinsured population. Ms. Major is a core trainer for the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. She connects her local organizing to training in anti-racism for people and institutions that live in or work with struggling communities. She recently served as co-chair of the Mayor of New Orleans Bring Back New Orleans Commission and is the co-founder and executive vice president, community engagement specialist for Citizens United for Economic Equity, an organization founded by New Orleanians to ensure equitable African-American community participation in the rebuilding of New Orleans. Ms. Major's latest published work is a chapter called Building a Net That Works, which appears in the anthology State of the Race, Creating Our 21st Century, Where Do We Go From Here, published by Diaspora Press. She has received numerous awards and citations for her achievements, but says her family is the greatest award that God has given her. Ms. Major, thank you for being here. You have been doing really great work for a really long time. And thanks for making time for us today. And I know that you have learned a lot in your years of doing this work. Thank you for being the example that we all aspire to, at least I do. And I have a big question to start off this conversation. I'm wondering if you might start off our conversation just by sharing with us one or two of the most significant things you've learned from your experience as an anti-racism educator and activist, about people, about systems.
First, I want to thank you and Eugene for inviting me here, and thank all of you for the willingness to have a conversation with me. And Lane, I sent you that thing. We could have cut that shit in half about all that stuff. Most of it's old anyway. And because I'm gonna tell you, when you say 30 years, I'm like, damn, it's been 50 years now. So I got to change that and my picture because now I have white hair. Okay. It's like I got white in my hair. The original picture has all my hair as being black. So first, I want to thank you all for the willingness to have these conversations, because in this society, people are unwilling. You know, it's like my daddy would say, you know, you can stick your head in the sand if you want, but remember your ass is exposed. So we got to have these conversations. They hard, but we have to have them. And I appreciate when Eugene said, but we got to have them with respect and loving people, because you can't help people move forward in their way of seeing the world or thinking or interacting if they don't know that you care about them. So one of the things is doing this work with love, and I appreciate you all for doing this. First of all, Lane, when you asked that question, the first thing that came to my mind is the fact that having gone to graduate, postgraduate kind of work, my best classroom, my best experience and learning was working in community. And my remembering the wisdom of the elders. They may not have had all of the education, but it brought me back home to understand, damn, them old people knew what they were talking about. Now that I'm an old person, I try to tell young people, this old person know what she's talking about. You know, yeah, you might get there faster, but I know the way. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that we have to not allow ourselves to be so educated that we dismiss the wisdom of those that came before us, and always remembering that we get in these rooms standing on somebody's shoulder. And so that is one of the learnings, and in terms of me and how I do my work, and where I elicit kind of wisdom. And that does not dismiss the academy and all of that, or the theories and all of that. But what I learned is we were doing the work. I learned the theories afterwards when I went to graduate school, and I go like, damn, the community understood this. You know what I'm saying? So I realized somebody had been copying the work of the people all the time. So all of these great scholars didn't wake up with all this genius. They have gleaned this from the genius of a whole lot of people. The other thing that I learned was in writing, this came to me, a colleague and I have completed a book. It's at the editors, and it's called Deconstructing Racism. Because the other thing that I've learned is that we want to reconstruct institutions and systems without going deep enough to deconstruct the racism that is inherently embedded within them. So it's like we're trying to pile on this good on top of the bad. The foundation's shaky. And I've come to a conclusion that ultimately, and probably not in my lifetime, but ultimately, this country is going to have to rewrite its constitution. It's going to have to rewrite its constitution, because you can't keep piling on amendments on top of a raggedy piece of paper and think that all things are going to change. When your founding documents dismiss the humanity of other human beings, you can't just clean that up by attaching stuff to it, okay? So, and ultimately, we're going to have to dismiss this whole concept of race. Now, we can't get rid of it now. People ask, Barbara, can we just stop not identifying people by race? I said, no, not yet, because then I won't be able to show you how I'm getting my ass kicked every day because of my race. It's the only thing I got right now to measure and show you the racial disparities in every system in this nation. My other learning, because I started out as a community organizer, and I can tell you, I wasn't trained, even though back in the day, I love when we say back in the day, when I was in undergraduate school, I learned some community organizing because I went to school so many years ago. Folk understood that you had to really do organizing. You can't write your way out of this. You can't talk your way out of this. You've got to organize and educate, inform people. And lately, not lately, but also what I know in my own community, I have to build my community's capacity to believe in themselves and the possibility of change. Because when you've been beat down so damn much, after a while, you begin to believe that it can't or it won't change. And so part of my role as an organizer is not just organizing around an issue, but helping my folk tap into helping them being able to dream again, dream of it being different, and tapping into the gifts that they have by just having been born. I actually believe that. So my learning is that to deal with racism in this country, and I said it like this in the book, I realized that it wasn't about jumping across a puddle. It's an ocean that I'm dealing with when I'm dealing with racism in America. It's systemic. It is, in fact, I say every system in this country was created originally, structured intentionally and legally to serve people called white exclusively. And so that when I say that, people go, what about HBCUs? Y'all know what that is, right? Historically Black college. First of all, that's an institution. It's not a system. They belong to racist systems, and they were created so that white people wouldn't have to go to school with Black people. So it's like, I just put it out there. And look, I'm in a room sometime where people don't even want to hear the word white. So let me get that out the way. White people, white people, white people. Now we can move on, okay? So you can come back and ask me questions about that later. But that lane too is that there's a wisdom in community that we overlook and dismiss and disrespect, I think. And the fact that racism in this country is so insidious and so inherent in everything. It's like the air that we breathe. It's not about people just being mean and hateful, but it's about systems that uphold white supremacy, created to uphold white supremacy, and that people don't even know that they've been made a part of these systems. So I've come to understand it is not white people who are my enemy. It is racism that is my enemy. And for white people, hopefully, to understand that racism is their enemy as well, because it sucks your humanity, because you've been made a part of these systems, willingly or unwillingly. It is what it is, as young folks say. And so we got to figure out how do we get out of this, and to understand dismantling racism in this country ain't about saving Black folk and other people of color. Dismantling racism in this country is about saving this country and about saving the souls of all of us, because everything is up for grabs. Damn, that was a long answer. Y'all okay with that answer? Yeah, okay, good. And look, I'm from New Orleans. I may make a mistake and call somebody baby. So I have to let folk know when I call you baby, it's because I'm from New Orleans, not because I want your ass, just to be clear, okay? I have to put that out.
Did I forget to say that she was like unapologetically real? Did I forget all of that? I guess you figured that out by now. I guess I don't have to say that. Too late. Cat's out of the bag. Okay. So Barbara, I'll tell you, one of the things that I loved about being in the Undoing Racism workshop with you is your candor. And one of the things I loved about the workshop is people get radically enlightened, right? About everything that you said, about how racism affects all of us, how it robs us all of humanity, how white people are unwitting candidates or participants, or, just de facto racist because of the way the system was set up. And one of the things that I personally became aware of in the workshop is something that I wasn't really thinking about, it wasn't on my radar, is how often equity trainings and racial equity policies are informed by white supremacy, and really put there for to, in a lot of ways, uphold white supremacy. I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit. How is that? And then maybe that will help us to go into how can we examine our own anti-racism activities to make sure that we are not in some ways putting stuff in place that upholds white supremacy and actually harming people of color.
Yeah, and to be clear, Lane, when you harm Black folk and people of color, you're harming yourself, because whether we like it or not, we are so connected to each other in this society and culture. And one of my learnings was I was like everybody else when I look at like I can't say the ending of the civil rights movement, but when I saw the slacking down, and part of that slacking down was an imposition, now that I see it, of programs, and all these, and I'm no different. It's like, yeah, I want a program in my community, federal government gonna fund the program, I could feed my folk, I could provide health care, whatever. And what I look back and I go like, wow, that was racism with a different color lipstick and a new outfit. Because what a lot of these programs did was distract us from the real movement of human rights and social justice. And it's not an either or. So the dichotomous way we think is like either we do the program or we do social justice. We have to do both because folk need to be fed and folk need to be housed. However, we stop asking the question, why? Why, we got all caught up in the, I fed 5,000 people this year. Next year, we getting funded to feed 10,000. And we don't ask the question no more, why are so many more people showing up hungry? And so I think it's a Japanese saying where if you really want to understand what's going on, you need to ask the question why 5 to 7 times. We need to go deeper in terms of why. Then I saw, like, okay, folk going like, yeah, well, like racism is a problem. 40 years I've been doing this, and folks saying the CDC now saying, like racism. Barbara, you talk to them? No, all they had to do was read our mission statement 40 years ago at the clinic when we said racism was the #1 health risk for African Americans. We were cleared in, and that wasn't just me, that was the community. So it's like these they come out and say, okay, we're gonna deal with racism. What was the response? Multiculturalism. Like this nation was multicultural before Europeans showed up. Let me just put that out there. So for me, it's 2 multicultural. You could be a racist multiculturalist, or you can be an anti-racist multiculturalist. And what I noticed with the multicultural movement was nobody was dealing with white culture. So somebody said, well, what's going on? So I asked a question. This is like, like I tell folk, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but some shit just makes sense. You know, like you ask a question, I'm going like, well, what the white culture bringing to the table? Nobody had a response. I go like, I get it. They bring the damn table. That's racist multiculturalism, okay? So if you're not dealing with the dominance of white culture, you're not dealing. Multiculturalism was a distraction from dealing with racism. Racism is very, very different from multiculturalism. So yeah, we can all show up in our native whatever and bring a different food from our culture and sing Kumbaya, but the power was still resting in the hands of white folks who are at the top of institutions and systems. So when I look at now, it's what? Diversity, inclusion, and what? Equity. It's like, okay, but you don't want to deal why equity is even on out there. See, you folk want to deal with equity without struggling to figure out, well, why is there no equity in existence? Let's just create equity. Let's not deal with the fact that these system races on the front end and you could never achieve equity, never, ever, ever, so that we can figure out then if we're to achieve equity, we got to look at more than bringing in some faces of color. You understand? Putting a couple people, you know, like they used to do in the old days. Let me go find me somebody on welfare and somebody put them on my board. And this is accountability. And let me say bullshit. That ain't accountability. Folk using that word accountability with there's been no consensus on what does that mean? Define that for me. Accountable to whom? How does that happen? So when I look at, and I'm not saying folk don't deal with diversity, inclusion, and equity, but if you just deal with that and not go deeper and look at the inherent racism within every level of your system or institution. Historically, what we've done is we'll look at personnel, like let's make things look better. So let's colorize it. So you personnel. Then you bring people of color up in this toxic environment and expect them to blossom and bloom. Now they get what they call them a director of equity or equity officer. And this one person with no power, no budget is supposed to address racism within an entire institution. And when they don't, they didn't do their job. So a lot of us are getting set up because we have a title, you know, I'm the equity officer. Yeah, well, how much juice you have in there to make real decisions? Well, I can talk to you by yourself, right? So that when I talk about diversity and equity and inclusion, that is a part of it, but that's not all of it. We've got to go deeper and become more comprehensive, because I really believe that we really are on the cusp of, and Reverend Barber was one of the first ones that I heard to say this, an amazing man. And he's talking about this, the new reconstruction in this country. And so this time, it's like, I look at everything as a learning process, and I look back at how good everything was. When I look at the civil rights movement, there's no way in hell I would ever disparage the folk who, I can't even imagine the courage that it took to do the work that they did. So I tell folk, whatever I do is pudding compared to what they had to deal with. But I also have to look at I have to lovingly critique, where did they stop short? When I first started doing this work, I had the pleasure is not even, I guess, a powerful enough word to set at the feet of people like Reverend C.T. Vivian as a mentor, or Ann Braden. If you don't know Ann, look her up. She was a little short, mighty, anti-racist warrior, white woman. Her husband Carl, they older than me, they had to deal with all that anti-communist crap that went on in this country. And I used to tease Ann. I said, Ann, they blew up 2 of your little Volkswagens. So it's like these folk had a lot that I heard, and I had to shape it into the time that I'm living in. But don't stop with where we are, and don't be fooled that this is far enough, I guess I should say, because I know look, 400 years of this, there's no quick fix to us getting out of this. That's the first thing. When I came out of college, you know, I was so smart, I figured, shit, I'm out of college, I'm a radical, shit, my fro tight, I'm good. I'm going to change all this within, give me 3-4 months. I saw so many of my friends lose their minds, their life, and I just tired and fatigued. And so I had to come to, no, this didn't start with you. This is not our fault. And I always say to folk, don't beat up on yourself for what you didn't do, that now you could have done it different. Like everybody, I did the best I could with what I understood at the time. Just be willing to know that maybe there are other ways of doing and being, and I'm constantly learning that.
Says, I love all those answers. One of the things I keep going back to my experience in the Undoing Racism workshop, and one of the things you said earlier today is people's discomfort with even being called white or saying the phrase white people. And I am always surprised at how white fragility shows up in workshops, even when there's people who I sometimes think, oh, they're evolved, right? They're evolved. They're with us, right? But there's such discomfort about that. I'm wondering if you can say something about that. How do you face that all the time? It does come up. How do you deal with that? And as someone who is just starting my training to become an anti-racism trainer, and in a room full of folks who are committed to doing some anti-racism work, how does that show up, and how do you deal?
It shows up a lot, and I'm just like I start out with folk on the front end by saying I do this work because I believe in the possibility of us, all of us, being different and better. One of the things that I say to my white cohorts is go find out how you even got to be white. See, white folks show up as like, well, I'm white. My mama was white. White folk didn't get to be white to 1790, but First Naturalization Act. You understand? You more than white. You were something else. Not only find out how you got to be white, but what was taken from you or that you gave up to be white. See, that's the struggle that I think that's very difficult for white people, that white is a political designation that defines your relationship to power in this nation. It has nothing to do with your humanity. It's a racial designation like Black is to me, and that's not all that you are. And I'm not suggesting you can just go back, because some white people, I'm not going to be white anymore. I'm going to now be a European American. Well, guess what? Ain't nobody seeing you as no European American. Folks see you as white. You get power and privilege and access to power with this white thing. And it is, I mean, it's like, shit, I was even confounded, as they would say, when I realized race wasn't real. I didn't always understand that. I was like, what you mean race ain't real? I'm Black. Hell, and I done been so many things. I done been a Negro. I done been colored. I've been a hairdo called the Afro. You understand? Now I define myself as both African American and Black. Black is part of the diaspora, but African American because I do see that as a culture indigenous to this nation, given all of what has happened to us as a people. And that's a whole debatable thing. But to me, African American is an indigenous culture, just like white is in this country. And they merged in opposition of each other, particularly. And that does not dismiss what happens to or has happened to First Nation and indigenous people, because I always have to say that as bad as it is and has been for us as people of African descent, my First Nation cohorts, and every system in this country, they fare out worse than even us. So I don't know if anybody's in here, but I always have to lift that up. But that's part of my responsibility. But understanding that white people have a responsibility to understand this white thing, particularly when you want to be in an authentic relationship with a person of color. You need to understand what that brings, what you bring with that. That's like what a name, the invisible knapsack, white fragility, whatever. I'm going like, well, it ain't invisible to me. You understand? As a person who's Black, I see that shit every day, all day. You know what I'm saying? 24/7. So white folk, I had to figure out who I am as an individual. However, I also have to understand that I am part of a collective. And I think the white thing becomes difficult for white people because in this culture, you're dealt with as an individual and not part of a white collective. That's shocking sometimes for white. Yeah, white folks is white folks till I know who you are. And I heard my mama and my dad and my grandma say that, didn't understand it, but now I understand it, that it has nothing to do with you as an individual human being, your character, but it has to do with you being part of a collective that automatically inherits access to power, benefit, and privileges. And some people say, well, privileges, I wasn't born with with a silver spoon or whatever. A privilege is to even have had your humanity acknowledged in this nation and still have your humanity acknowledged. And when I look at, like we look at George Floyd, I go like, but that's what the nation has always said. That brother wasn't human. And none of the other brothers and sisters who've been killed, they weren't human. None of the documents in this nation say that they're human beings or that I'm a human being. Therefore, I can be dealt with any kind of way. Somebody said I was in one of my family. I'm the eldest of 10 children. And we were all talking and stuff like that. And one of my sisters said, they treat us like dogs. My other sisters say, no, they treat their dogs better. And I went like, damn. And that's true. When I get on a plane and see talking about this, they service dog with their cute little dogs and their cute little designer bags and shit. I mean, no, ain't no damn service dog. Ain't nothing wrong with you. And I know folk got service dogs for real, for real. You know what I'm saying? But no, and so for white people, that's part of the struggle is figuring out how you fit in the scheme of this, how you've been played and set up. See, it ain't just me, you know what I'm saying, who've been lied to and bamboozled, misled, misdirected. It is all of us. It is all of us.
It is all of us. And I think too, the discomfort that white people feel, it's like the first opportunity for people to tap in and say, oh, I get what it feels like to be collectivized, like to be that uncomfortable, and then to say, okay, well then now congratulations, because you just got to feel something that Black people have felt since we got here. Like we're collectivized, we're just all thrown in that pot, and we can define ourselves differently all we want, but we're still seen as Black, and therefore are denied access to what white people have access to, because you are collectivized as white, even though the myth is, oh, this is all about, this is a nation of individuals.
And right? It's like nobody on here in none of these little boxes, I would imagine, would ever do anything to hurt me or deny me. I mean, people are white all the time. You don't have to. The system does it for you in your name. None of you would say, I can't live in your neighborhood. You don't have to. The banks and the real estate industry does it for you in your name. And so when white people don't speak out, then you are colluding with maintaining white supremacy. That's the issue that white people don't understand. Barbara, I would never deny you. No, you don't have to. The police, none of you would hurt my sons or my grandsons. You don't have to. The police are protecting you on your behalf in your name. And so when folk cry out for justice, everybody needs to do that and need to understand and need to stand up and say, you will not do this in my name, on my behalf. I will not be a participant in maintaining white supremacy. And that, look, we saw it in the streets after George, but you don't see that often. Maybe y'all see it. I've not seen that a lot.
Mm-mm.
I'm just like they say, I'm gonna sit that right there and leave it. We can come back to it. But that's where white people have to collectively denounce injustice, not having no people of color there with you. Because usually when you see it, It's sprinkling people of color or people of color, whatever. You know, like it's just stand up for what's right and say, not in my name. And I'm not saying you won't pay a price for that, because you too will pay a price. You know, when I realized how these systems were so willing to maintain, you know, like not a conspiracy theory, but these systems conspire to maintain their control. It was Kent State. I'm a Southern University graduate, so when they killed us, we know that's part of it. I said, damn, they'll take out their own babies to maintain this shit. So they take out white babies too. They don't give a damn. Systems maintaining white supremacy. And ultimately, it's only that top little few folk that really ultimately get the benefits. And a good example, I go like, people really acting an ass because people getting $1,400, that stimulus thing, was it 14, wherever it was. I said, but nobody's looking at what American Airlines and Delta and all these big corporations getting billions, but they complaining about $1,400, $1,500. You know, I'm not a violent woman, but every now and then I actually could participate in some ass whipping drive-bys. Because it's like, come on, you know what I'm saying? This is a waste. I just don't have energy. Like they said, bullshit dies from the lack of a second. So I don't give no energy to that. I can't. I'm only going to engage in conversation with people who say they want to hear, they want to listen, not agree with me, but at least to listen. Because if folk want to debate to stay where they stuck, I'll come back for you, but I don't have the energy to get. I got to move. You know, it's like it's too draining to stay stuck with folk. So knowing when and let me tell you, you got to love your folk. Because what amazed me when white people say how difficult it is to talk to members of their family, I go like, shit, I know. I've been trying to talk to white folk for all my life, so I know it ain't easy. But it's a job you have. But you can't impose what you believe on folk. You got to deal with people where they are. They gotta know that you love them, so you're not saying something to put them down or dismiss them, because people are products of their environment, what they've learned, what they've heard, and then you got to walk with them gently, and sometimes you may have to leave them and come back for them, but you don't allow them to keep you stuck where they are. You can't do that.
So, Barbara, that brings up a good point I want to ask you about. You know, the point has been made that racism robs us of our humanity, right? Yeah. You know, all of us. So can you speak to what you consider to be the common challenges across the racial lines to reconnecting with our humanity?
For me, one of the first ones I stated earlier is that white people think that dealing with racism is about saving me. And when I say me, I'm talking collective me. The other thing is that white people understand that they've been made wittingly or unwittingly partners in maintaining the oppression of people of color, Black folk and people of color. And I have to say Black folk and people of color because, see, I'm checking out all this anti-Blackness. I understand it exists, but there's a peculiar and particular anti-African-American Blackness. So that's global, not just here. Even Black folks showing up with internalized colonialistic ideologies, and they got issues with other Black folk here. So we got to have these conversations. So when I say people of color, don't think I'm talking about, oh yeah, we all get along. That's bullshit. No, we don't. We all got all this stuff, and it's a whole lot of mess out there that we have to get through. But I think, Eugene, one is to understand that this struggle to end racism is about them as well as me. And the other obstacle is, for me, the unwillingness of folk wanting to not only address the truth in this nation, they don't even want to hear it. You know, it's like, and it's unfortunate because when I think about the history of this nation, we've been lied to so much that I'm hearing people don't want to hear the truth, not knowing that there's some goodness there as well. You know, everything ain't all bad. It's like The lies have covered up good stuff. So that is first, that ending racism is in all of our interests. And the second is that we cannot end racism if we're unwilling to confront the truth about this nation and its formation and how we continue to practice what it was set up to do.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to open it up to the floor for some Q&A. And so you guys, so in doing that, excuse me, if you raise your hand, you want to go down to the bottom of your screen to the far right. It says reactions. Click on that button and then click the raise hand button. And I'm going to start this off. It's an interesting thing. I was listening to Trevor Noah, and this goes back, I don't know how many, months or a year or whatever, how he was saying that, people around the nation, because racism is not exclusive to the USA, and it's been going on for more than 400 years. The United States they may have had this experience for 400 years, it may be a little longer, but this is stuff, this racism, this systemic racism has been going on around the world for centuries, upon centuries. And one of the things that Trevor Noah talked about, he says, the United States is interesting in that we are the only nation who is afraid to talk about this situation. And so where every other country, in the South Africa, they talked about, let's just talk about what happened. And then there's the reparations and then that discussion. And even in Germany, with all that went on then, there was a conversation. But here in the USA, talking about racism and all of the atrocities that have happened in the past and that are still going on is something that is an interesting phenomena, where people are afraid to talk about it. And that's one of the reasons why I love Race Talk Revolution, is because here we are beginning to talk about it, right? So I just wanted to bring that out, hoping that as we continue with this broadcast today, that people are raising your hands and then wanting to talk about where you are. And then also, I want to just drop this seed for you to think about. You don't have to talk about it right now, but to think about, what is it that I can do? Cool. So we have a couple of hands raised. I don't know who went first, but
before,
yes.
I would be remiss. Tell Trevor, call me. Because see, the whole concept of race didn't start to the 17th century. We need to understand. And the other thing is, South Africa came here to learn, as Nazi Germany did.
Yes.
They came to this country to learn how to implement a racial, a white supremacist construct. Yes. Folk have always, because let's be clear, folk have always fought and struggled with each other around the world. But the idea of race is relatively new. Race did not always exist. So, and in this country, because we're the foundation of a white supremacist ideology that has been exported, not that folk didn't deal with each other. See here, when you look at the history of this nation, colonization was going on before race was introduced. In this nation, you begin to see, when you look at the history, the racialization of those folk who have been colonized. So part of it, Eugene, I think the fear of talking about it is because we are so much the creators. We didn't create race. You go all the way back to, you can deal with Linnaeus. Look, studying this stuff, I'm like, who come up with all this crazy stuff? So you look at Blumenbach, these, German and French race theorists. But I'm still talking 17th century, the concept of race, that this whole thing that you could categorize human beings in a hierarchical way, that some was more human than others. So I think, Eugene, the fear of us talking about it is we will have to admit that we fine-tuned it. Came from Europe, but it got really synthesized and fine-tuned here in this country. When I think of folk coming, let me tell you, because I used to say, and I didn't even have a race analysis. I used to say, they must have Nazis in the State Department. We'll come to find out they sure in the hell did. They brought them bastards here and they gave them jobs and shit. Then I find out they came here to learn how to treat other human beings in Nazi Germany is less than human beings. South Africa, they came
Right.
here to study. Hell, Nazi Germany came here and learned how to do biological warfare. See, we need to, this country, like I said, got some good stuff, but it's some really rotten stuff that we
Right.
got to admit to. But only can we, when we regurgitate it, we didn't do it. Hell, none of us here did this, but we got to admit as a collective, as a nation, that's what happened. So I think that's why, that's just my idea why folk don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to talk about it. Let's just move on. Well, no, we need to figure out how we got here. And people
Right.
ask, well, how did we get here? Well, hell, we started out to get here. There was no other road to travel.
People never want to,
Thank you.
people don't want to feel guilty, and that's just the bottom line.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
guess what? Look, we got a song here. No, it ain't my fault. See Mardi Gras? It ain't my fault, but it is our responsibility.
It's our responsibility.
That's right. It ain't our fault. We didn't do this mess.
Yeah.
Eugene, Colleen had her had a
Yeah. So
question
we're going to
up
go
first.
with Colleen, and then we'll go with Frank. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Barbara. Really enjoyed your comments. And I just wanted to add that the Nazis thought that the Americans were even worse than them.
Yes.
So they didn't even go down the road that America did. But my question is, not a question, but I really would like you to dig in a little bit more on how racism has robbed white people of their humanity. I know you touched on it at the beginning, but can you list out some more specific ways?
One of the things that whiteness has done is it has robbed white people of that which gives you life. That's your culture. Because to become white in this country, you have to give up your culture, your language. I think cultural anthropologists say the last thing to go is a recipe. And I used to think, well, they changed their name at Ellis Islands, but reading Dr. Ron Takaki, a lot of white people changed their own name. You had to give up, and buy into the whole concept of what is family, 2.5 children or whatever. Buy into these concepts that removes you further. In dominant white culture, one of the distinct difference for me in terms of defining success is moving as far away from where you started. Is like that's how success is defined. But everything, it's the stories, it's all of that. When part of the process in the workshop that I do is I ask white people what they like about being white. Now I'm going, spoiler alert. The only thing that white people can list that they like about being white are the privileges that they get from being white. When people come, I don't care if you Asian, if you Black, if you Pacific Islander, whatever. You know what folk list? My family. They list my food, my dance, my swag, my hair, the different colors, blah, blah, blah. And it's and that's not to have people of color bragging about that, because those things, our spirituality, those are the things that have kept us alive under this oppression. And for white people, it's and they said, well, I don't like that, Barbara. I don't like it. I said, because you are here and in this conversation, don't tell me you don't like the fact that you don't worry as much about your son when he drives. What I want to hear you is yeah, I don't like it that Barbara's son or grandson is not as safe as my son or grandson. That's different. So robbing folk of their humanity, culture is what gives you life. What white has given people of European descent is a lifestyle. Now, do all white people benefit the same? No. If you LGBTQ plus, if you a woman, if you poor, you are targeted based on those identities. However, that white thing still bring you something. And for white people to go figure out what is it that white thing gives me? I don't need to list that for them, but they got to be pushed to list it. Because the first thing they say, okay, another spoiler alert, is that I said, what you like about being white? Well, I never thought about it. I wish my Black ass could walk the street and never have to think about being Black. I'm just saying, that's something else I'm gonna sit there and leave there for folk. It's the fact that unless they may be in a group where everybody around them, people of color, not having to think about it. Only one time in the history of me doing this for 40 years, I heard one Black woman say, well, I don't think about it. Either she was lying or she need mental services, okay? Because it's like, I'm just, look, and I was loving to the sister, but I did have somebody check up on her after the workshop. And you telling me you got sons and you don't have to think about this? There's, because, you know, just disconnected. But the fact that you are a participant, you're talking about taking your humanity, the fact that you have been made a participant in trying to diminish mine takes away yours. That's as simple as I can put it. It's like, there's no other way for me to say it.
Yeah. Thank you. That's said very clearly.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
We'll go to Frank and then Stephanie.
Miss Major, in my understanding, in my own thought processes, the whole consciousness of being the other started a long time before we even hit the 1700s in America. In my mind, it started when we, in the feudal systems, and even before that, where you had the kings and the peasants.
Right.
And in my mind, it becomes an issue where the only way that we're going to be able to change the system is to change who's on top. Because it's not, so let me pose this question to you. My belief and my understanding is that the only real way to change this system is to put more people of color on tops of government, major corporations, and all organizations in order to start looking at the system and creating change from within, to begin to move the conversation forward. Can you comment on that as a possible solution for moving us forward? For example, I think ultimately every church needs to have a complete group of every church, every business has to have a complete group of all the multiple races looking at them, at being in leadership to start changing the cultures within. Do you think that's a good possibility for moving the cultures forward?
That has potential, Frank, but let me be real honest with you. They got a whole bunch of folk of color who confused as well. So just having somebody of color on top don't solve the issue. For me, if I look at, say, an institution, let's just say whatever, then I've got to look at the mission of that institution. And the mission of that institution has to, for me, clearly say that it wants to be an anti-racist institution and understand what that means. And that's not just about adding people of color, but it is seeing all people and their full humanity. But they also have to acknowledge it, not to repeat itself. It needs to acknowledge where it has been racist, because that's the only way you can figure out, you know, how you correct, what's the corrective action is language. So how has it, and let's just take a church, you know, it's like whatever the church, we want to be anti-racist church. I'll just take a church, say, okay, that's fine. But also what that means is you got to look at your structure. And if you want to be an anti-racist church, you may have to change the way that you structure. But also you got to look at your policies. You got to even look at your religious doctrine, because folk have interpreted those in very racist kinds of ways, whether it's the Bible or whatever, the Quran, the Gil, whatever, that they have to rethink all of what they've done. Now, this doesn't happen overnight. You know, like institutions don't become anti-racist in a moment. But that having people of color, and I'm saying having people of color with an anti-racist analysis, because look, I can point out some people of color I don't want nowhere near me, you understand, dealing with this issue. Clarence Thomas, that's one, but I got like a million more of them suckers sitting on the sides, like stay over there. So having a person of color with an anti-racist analysis. And so, because the real deal is that there's a place at the table and in leadership for everybody. And the other thing is that we've got to move away from the way that we do things is the only way to do things. For instance, one of the things was a whole, this group we had called the St. Thomas Irish Channel Consortium. And it became a national model. Folk would come from around the country and the world to come to a meeting. Our meetings lasted very, very long. Well, we had, because of government, the government says, well, when you have an organization, you need to have, you know, a board and blah, blah, blah. You got to have all these structures, right? Said, okay, we got that. But when it came, but they're also creative and innovative, because racism stifles our innovation that the community said. So we were running our meetings, you know, like Robert Rules of Order, right? That's how most people run their meeting. And one of the community members said, Barbara, what's this Robert Rule of Order stuff? I go like, well, it's the high school. She said, well, I don't know, Robert. Brother didn't give his last name. We ain't running our meeting like this. We want a place for everybody. So our meetings lasted longer because the community voice had to be heard. We listened to everybody. And what we said is we gave total veto power. We relinquished our power as a board to the community, which says, okay, we make a decision as a board. Everybody here got something to say, but y'all can veto any of this stuff, y'all, because it's y'all, this your community, blah, blah, blah. Not one decision was reversed. And what I realized, people would say, I don't agree with it, boy, but everybody, you heard me. I said, yeah, baby, I heard you. That meant my voice was heard. It's not about me always agreeing. So just, and you know, Frank, the scary thing is that a lot of white people believe that, oh my God, if Black people in charge, they're gonna treat us like we treated them. At the same time, though, they're saying, but we treated them good. So if that's true, what you concerned about? So it's not solely putting people of color, you know, it's about having folk for me, and when I say anti-racist, I'm also speaking anti-oppression, because I can't be an anti-racist and then I got all this homophobic crap going on, or, you know what I'm saying, I'm not, you know, you just can't. That is an oxymoron to me, because to be an anti-racist is to see everybody's full humanity, and that means that you don't in no way oppress anybody for who they are as a human being. But yeah, the othering, see, but the whole thing about the othering, you're absolutely right. Like I said, there had always been fighting and folk knocking, but the idea of race is what is new. It's like y'all was fighting already. What y'all had to come up with the race thing for?
Thank you, Ms. Major.
Mm-hmm.
All righty, we go with Stephanie and we go with Stephanie and then Norman.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the anti-Black American phenomenon, if I can refer to that, yes, and how it manifests globally. I just want to mention that my experience with identifying myself as a Black American came from living outside the United States. I lived in Africa and Central America, and it was very evident that the communication, the global internet, so to speak, this is before the internet was a reality in the 70s and 80s when I was living abroad, that being a Black American was something very unwanted and negative and not to be associated with. Right. So could you speak more about that in regards to the need to do anti-racism work, particularly among people of color?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Stephanie. When I think about it, and I guess I see it, I've always seen it manifested. Let me tell you, one of the first places I saw this manifested was in the foundation world, Casey, Kellogg, all of this. And I'm going like, okay, they said, well, we hiring Black folk. Well, what I checked out is, yeah, but none of these Black folk are from this country. there was this, the ideology of this exotic other, I call it, that somehow Black folk from everywhere else are smarter than Black folk here. I don't care if you from Africa, and part of that is come through the colonialization of other parts of the world, but this global emphasis on maintaining the less than of Black folk in this country is folk have internalized it all over the world. That and I'm going, like, an example was, and I was doing a workshop, and my clinic at the time when I was director, everybody still to this day, we have 6 campuses, teaching clinic. I retired, but nobody seems to know that. So I still act as I'm a consultant with the clinic, that everybody go through the workshop, though, not just this, a whole workshop. Because my folk got enough problems. I don't need confused folk coming in there working with them. And there was this young, beautiful African medical student, and she went through the workshop, and she said, and they call me Mama Barbara. She said, Mama Barbara, you are right. She said, my father, she's from Africa. And she said, my father said to me when I come to the United States that I can marry anybody I want except an African-American man. I go like, wow. And I said, but I wasn't mad at this young woman. I was beginning to understand, and my going to Africa helped me understand how folk had internalized this. I saw her some years later, maybe about 5 years ago, when I was just, practicing physician, doing really well. She ran up to me. I was so glad to see her. And she said, Mama Barbara, remember what I told you my dad said? I said, I'll never forget it. Because I told her at the time, I said, I want you to marry whomever you love, period. That's how I'm. And she said, you remember? I said, yeah, I remember. Your dad told you. I said, I will never forget it. Your dad told you to marry anybody you wanted to except an African-American man. And I said, what did I tell you? She said, you told me to marry whomever I love. And I said, did you? She said, yes, I did. She said, and I want you to meet the person I married. She said, I married an African-American woman. I go like, damn, I'd love to see your daddy's face now. Like, yes, do what you got to do. But what that young woman helped me understand was let me tell you, and it's not because when this propaganda about who we are as folk in this country, Black folk of African descent, it's been sprinkled all over this world about one of my colleagues, we start working in Japan with folk in Japan because it was pictures on toothpaste, and I forget what cartoon characters of Black folks. It was hideous stuff. And this father and his young son, my colleague is African-American, a professor of history. And his wife is Japanese. And this family reached out to them, and we started doing work. But just to look at how this stuff, and it's particularly targeted at African Americans and not just folk of African descent. Not that they don't get some of the brunt, but it's different. And I know it's different. But I know folk are being trained and taught this. Hell, I did work in Mexico many years ago, and one of my colleagues, this is so many years ago when they had the big earthquake in Mexico, and the companies wanted to dig out the machines, but women organized and say, no, our sisters are in there buried under all this rubble. You will not dig out. So there was cohorts of us who went to Mexico to stand with these women and learn from these women mostly. And one of my colleagues was darker skinned than me. And she said, Barbara, they treat me different. And I go like, nah. And I figure I'm dark, right? So I said, nah, you just, Rondine, that's just you being sent. And I asked though, because I got to trust what people tell me they feel is real, not just what I made. And when I asked one of the women, and she said, yeah, they do. And I asked her why. She said, because Black people were portrayed, Black people from the United States were being portrayed in movies and stuff as folk who kill and steal and do all kind of deviant kinds of things. And then she showed me, she said, the billboards, this is in Mexico, of the skin lightener. So this whole thing, how this stuff kind of it crossed paths, you know what I'm saying? So it wasn't just an African American thing, it became a Black thing. So the internalization, like I said, of colonialism, because folk who live in colonized parts of the world or have lived, I don't think they realize that they've internalized colonialistic ideologies. Then they bring it here. We've internalized racism, and then we try and connect. And it's like people of color and white people. You're talking about folk who've been damaged and broken by this stuff, trying to connect without realizing that they've been damaged and broken. And so the connection has to happen as all of us are on a journey of healing, all of us, from what has happened to all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll go to Norman and then Adine. You're still on mute, Norman. And you're still on mute. So you want to unmute yourself. There you go. You're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's going to be very short. One of the first things that was spoken about today was the need for a new constitution, which means that there's going to have to be a revolution in this country. I don't know if it's going to be violent or non-violent, but there definitely has to be that. Most of the things that are being discussed can't really bring about anything, because they're talking about us bringing people to the churches and having all the different races involved. It's not a matter of the races, it's a matter of the ideas and the ideals. That's where everything has to start, in my opinion. And that's it. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Norman.
Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Norman. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah. The craziness started with ideas. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you're absolutely right. Because it's like, yeah, I'll bring my choir over to your church. You bring my choir over. That's really good. Now we know we can all sing really well, but power still rests in the hands of white folk. Guys, like, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Ooh. Miss Adine.
Thank you. Barbara, thank you very much. I want to say, I too have New Orleans roots, and I certainly understand the evil and the ugliness of the colorism in that it is an evil which is equal to white racism. Yes. which came from white racism, and we were stupid enough to adopt it.
Right, absolutely.
Okay. You asked earlier what whites say when you ask them what they like about being white. Yeah, and the answer really is that you're not Black.
Damn.
That's really the most honest answer. And this insistence upon people who have owned slaves, and it's not only the United States, it's all of Central America, it's all of South America. This insistence this day that you need to totally dehumanize the people you torture and then share their substandard being with the rest of the world is what has continued all of this. Not that you did a terrible thing to perfectly decent human beings, but you did a terrible, horrible thing, and they have become subhuman. And that's what whites don't want to let go of. I'm through.
No, you're not, but I'll take that.
Thank you, Adine. It's interesting. And then we're going to have Jason and then Leah. It was interesting. I was speaking with a friend of mine, this, good friend of mine who was white, and she was speaking about a client of hers who I happen to know as well, who is Black and has, great hair. She says, God, she always has some good hair. Whatever she does, with her hair is great. And the skin color, and I mean the skin and she always, frequently talks about how Black people, you can't really tell their age and all of that. She said, but you know what? I would still rather be white. And the conversation stopped there because I looked at her and I just smiled, going, "Yeah, well, I know why, right?" And she knows why, of course. And it was just for me, it was an interesting feeling, that I got when she said that. It was almost like, oh wow, no shit. Yeah. It was just a trip to feel that. Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Eugene, and thank you, Barbara. I'm so grateful to be here with all you're saying. And what Norman said really tripped something in me about your thought about how, we have to change the Constitution, and I think that's obviously true. And I started thinking, well, if somehow we managed, like tomorrow, to change the Constitution, which I know that's not happening, but if we did, it would not change the consciousness of everybody in the country, right?
Oh, right.
And so, but also if we actually had that Constitution, it would help the process of changing the consciousness in the country. And I'm just curious, I totally agree with you. We need to change the Constitution. Have you put thought into like what the path is from here to there? Because it's hard for me to see from here.
Yeah, it is. And Jason, not jokingly, because one of the things is like for me, and I'll speak for me, Barbara, the individual here. It's like I have a responsibility because I stand on the shoulders of other people that I should see further, and so I can't see all the way to the end. I can't. But what I do first is kind of two is that changing the Constitution. You're absolutely right in terms of how folks feel and how folks think or whatever. And the only way I can deal with that is I can't change how you feel about me, but I can legislate how you treat me. You understand? Mm-hmm. It's like I can't tell you to love me, but there's a law said if you hurt me, you know what I'm saying? There's some consequences to it. And for me, where I start kind of is where I am. And I tell folks, we can't bite off more than we can chew. None of us can go and just change a system. So we start with our organization or our institution or the system that we are part of. And for me, it really is looking at every level of an institution the levels. When I look at the levels, it's like, okay, rather than just colorizing, I need to change my mission. I need to look at my structure, and my mission need to be rooted in a worldview that's much more inclusive. I need to look at the structure. If this is the mission that I want for my organization, excuse me, then what structure will allow me? Because a lot of times we go off on weekend and change these missions, but we retain the same structure. Then I got to look at my policies and my programs, and I've got to thoroughly do like an evaluation. It's like overlaying a lens of race and oppression over these policies. Where are they? So, and not do it by myself. I can't. If I want to change my organization, I need the community who say that organization serves or supposed to be accountable to. They need to be with me on this journey. That's why it's difficult sometimes, because you got to develop a critical mass within your organization or institution who's willing to walk this road. Then I look at my policies and practices, and I got to look at my programs. Then I look at, okay, if this is my mission, this is the structure we have. Then I can look at what kind of personnel, what kind of people do we want to be a part of this journey? And like I said, I don't believe that systems and institutions as they exist now have the ability to do this on their own. So they've got to be partnered with community. Now that brings up a whole nother, I'm not telling you this is easy. This is just me learning and figuring out through mistakes, made lots of them. I had to build the capacity of my community to hold me accountable. See, that's hard, and folk are not willing to do that, because it's like, okay, I was asked to chair this consortium. I didn't live in that community, mostly public housing, you know, like Poe. It was so damn Poe, didn't even have the OR and Poe, okay? And I go like, Miss McKnight, I don't even live here, you know what I'm saying? Y'all, they say, no, Barbara, we want you to chair this because one, you ain't gonna lie to us, and two, you speak their language. So I spoke white institutional language, and I spoke the language of the community. So I was a translator, but I built an accountable relationship with my community. It wasn't geographical, that they knew, and I knew, because they would tell me, and if you ever lied to us, we're gonna take you down. I got it. So part of my responsibility, though, I couldn't be that voice. Y'all gonna have to take this one day. So it ain't about me going to the mayor, city council, always speaking. You got to be there, Miss McKnight. Miss McKnight said, I don't speak that well. I said, they understand what the hell you saying when you say it. I don't think you don't speak that well. They get it. But I started out, so I'm in front, but I couldn't stay there. So gradually you got to develop leadership in your community. You got it. They need to know what you know. It wasn't enough for me to have an analysis. And so when they cut my head off, folks still standing there dumbfounded at this stuff. We've got to develop leadership in the community. So when I did get ready to go, to show you, I don't care how good you think you are. When I got ready to leave, I said, it's time for me to move on. I was still and they said, we don't want you to go. I said, but one of the leaders, her name was Barbara, she said, but Barbara, I feel you. I said, yeah, it's time for me to go, Barbara. Y'all got this. So I then said, I'm leaving. I think so-and-so should become the executive director. Them big voluptuous sisters could have thrown at that time, my little ass out the window, but they loved and respected me, and they laughed. They go like, Barbara, you, didn't you teach us, you trained us? I said, yeah. Well, don't you think we had a capacity to pick who the hell we wanted? I go like, you know what, y'all right. I need to get my butt out of here. Y'all got this. And they had this. But that was years, Jason. I ain't gonna tell you that happened like that. That was years. Because when I first came to that community, I was invited by the leadership who had seen me do other stuff in welfare rights. The community as a whole wasn't welcoming me. One of the young women now, she said, Miss B, you know what we said about you and Miss Crystal when y'all showed up? I said, no, but I can imagine. I said, what did y'all say? She said, we said, who them two bitches think they all gonna come up in here because they went to college and tell us what to do? I said, I figured y'all said that. I said, but I loved y'all enough to stay, okay? And she said, yeah, but they come to find that out because it wasn't a 9 to 5, and it's not. When you invested in community, I'm not telling you, you got to move in the hood, all of that. But folk got to know that you care when their son been shot up and they call you at night and the doctor said, Barbara, the doctor just said, if we praying, people pray. Or you got my clinic is a clinic. I'm giving shots, treating diabetes. But when somebody died, they ain't got nobody to run off the funeral program. Then I got a copy machine. Or when the police harassing the young brothers and I go like, we need to meet with FBI, damn local police, blah, blah, blah. They go like, Miss B, we ain't got nowhere we can meet with them. I said, you're going to meet with them here at the clinic. And some of the young brothers would say, well, I don't need to be seen. I said, I don't wear a paper bag, but we're going to meet with them. But y'all, we've got to be more than we've been trained to be. Our institutions and organizations has to be more than we've been told that they are supposed to be. It's like it is what it is. I wish I could, because I tell folk, I don't have high blood pressure because I eat a bunch of pork. I have high blood pressure because I'm Black in America and living that life. I'm clear. I get it. And thank God I got an anti-racist doctor who get it. And she's white, by the way. But she understands that. But we got to be more than we've been told, y'all. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ooh. We have Leah, then we have Tyrone, and then Jeff.
Hi, thank you, Ms. Major. I just appreciate your talk so much. I loved your honesty and your realness. And I just wanted to talk about for a minute what you said about white people not wanting to have this talk and move this conversation to DEI or multiculturalism before we confront the racism part. And I just want to say, as a white person, I think that white people deep down know that something, is wrong with the way we've been running this country, and deep down know that we're racist, and have been living this lie. So that's why white people don't want to talk about it. I don't know. So these conversations are so invaluable. I thank you for your generosity for teaching us and being there. I also just wanted to talk about what you said about accountability and how, that word's been thrown around a lot. And there's so many different definitions of it. And the way I'm thinking of it is that I just keep showing up in anti-racist activities and following the lead of Black leaders. This group and the Poor People's Campaign and other things. I think I'm just trying to follow Black leaders. So thank you very much for being a leader.
Thank you, Leah. I'm not
Thank you.
always a leader. See, sometimes, and it can get confusing. In my community, I'm a leader sometimes I'm a community organizer. It's like, and knowing the difference. There's a place here in New Orleans called Congo Square. And in Congo Square, it's the only place in this country where Africans can meet, do their drumming on Sunday when we were enslaved. And our new mayor was thinking about building City Hall in Congo Square, right? Not a smart move. So there was a protest, and the community called me, but not to lead. They just wanted my presence, my voice there. And I had to know, as an effective organizer, it wasn't my place to lead. That community did that. That too is leadership, but in a different, because we get, sometimes confused. Leadership means that you're always in front, but it's not. It's right. It has a lot of different roles, and you learn it after you make a lot of mistakes, where you get out of your lane. You know what I'm saying? Because it's easy to get in the wrong lane. What does somebody say? If you stay in your own lane, less likely to, have a bunch of accidents. So learning how to stay in my lane as an organizer. And so, because sometimes I had to learn that, like everybody else. Not like I woke up a genius and I got this, but part of it is being an organizer means that I've got to step back and mentor that leadership as it emerged. And I saw this leadership emerging in my community. The same thing with take down the statues. I wasn't a leader. 40 years ago, we had that same fight, but there was a whole new group of young people doing that. And I'm going like, yeah. And in fact, they told me, Mama Barbara, we know you old, you stay home with COVID-19 out here. We want you to get sick. I say, baby, don't worry. I'm staying home. I got this and y'all got that, and God got all of us. How about that? Like, there cool.
Go.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you so much. We have Tyrone, and then we have Jeff, and we'll have Jeff be the last one. Thank you.
Good morning, Miss B. You a bad mama jamma. That's all I got to say.
Oh, look, you sound so much like the folk here at home. I'm Miss B. I'm Auntie. I'm Miss Barbara. Oh my God, you made me feel at home.
Well, I'm from Chicago originally, but I have New Orleans roots on my mom's side. So,
oh, cool.
Three points I wanted to make. One is back to Dean's point. There's a lot of money spent in this country on getting a tan.
Yeah.
On pumping up your lips, and on pumping up your butt. Okay, So those are three characteristics that are normally associated with African Americans. So I just think that's unique to Dean's point. The other thing is that this concept of white is really interesting, because what I've noticed is that white people seem to associate white with simply being human.
Yeah.
So now we got a definition of humanity as white. It's kind of an unconscious thing, but nonetheless, that's an association. And so if you're not considered, if you're part of an other, it's kind of like being subconsciously not considered to be human. So I think redefining what that means is very important, and not to buy off on it, without understanding the connection or the disconnection maybe between the two. And the last thing for all my white brothers and sisters on this call, it takes courage. It takes courage to step out. Leah, I really appreciate what you said. It's a humbleness about that, but you're a leader too.
Absolutely.
And I think the most difficult thing for folks to do is to have conversations with their family. Jason and I talked about that. It's one of the hardest things for people to do, but guess what? That's a hell of a good place to start.
Yeah.
Because you can meet folks where they are. I'm complete.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
My pleasure.
Good stuff. In the interest of time, now I want to go to Jeff real fast. Jeff, if you can make this succinct, that would be great.
Hi, Barbara. Jeff Tomlinson. I was a student of yours in an Undoing Racism workshop years ago. I wanted to ask you to talk about that for a moment, the future of anti-racism workshops and training, what we're doing wrong in this country. You've already started to talk about that, how we're spending too much time on DEI and multiculturalism. One of my questions is mandatory versus voluntary training in organizations, and what else do you see on the forefront for the future for training?
Hey, Jeff, again, I wish I knew what look, I realized that, like every now and then you go like, you're doing this work of wise and making a difference, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna tell you when I realized that not just the group I work with, but that we were having impact in this country. When the last president of this country tried to outlaw these conversations, I'm like, damn, we hit them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then he went, but where they went was Seattle, Washington, and we had strong base there, and the strong young white woman who was, I think she's the attorney for Seattle, said, no, we're not going to do this. I think these conversations, Jeff, like everything else, they're going to continue, and bit by bit, I got to believe that sometimes it's not always the big old things. It's small things. So I believe, one, that there's no way that these conversations will stop, because as long as folk are being oppressed, they're going to push back. So some folk out there think, this country, and I also believe that this country can't stay where it is. Some folk trying to pull it back. Some folk it's going to move. And it's gonna move, and folk are not going back. And somebody said there will be a revolution in this country. Whether it's who was that said that? Was that somebody? Don't know if it'll be Norman. It might have been you. I don't know if it'll be violent, non-violent, but there has to be. The country cannot stay as systems can't stay where they are. Systems were asked to do what they were not created to do: serve everybody. They can't. They weren't created to do that. So systems themselves and institutions are trying to come up with very revolutionary and proactive ways. The only thing they see out there is diversity, inclusion, and equity. It's a start, ain't no beginning, and it cannot be a distractor from, no, we got to go deeper within this system or this institution. So, Jeff, I'm good. I don't know if I'll be a seat to whatever happens, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like we all got to do what we can where we are. Don't expect that we can all change it like that. We can't. But every little thing that we do, don't ever underestimate nothing that you do, from telling a child you see in the store whose nose is snotty and clothes raggedy that you are going to be great, that you are
Yes.
wonderful. Makes a difference. Just know everything you do makes a difference.
Barbara, thank you so very much. So very much. Thank you, everybody who asked questions and all of those in the chat. I want to turn this back over to Lane.
Hope I
Thank
get to
you.
meet some of y'all one day.
Yes, well, we want you to come back and hang out with us for sure. We are here every Wednesday from 12 to 1:30. That was a perfect way for us to end. Thank you, Barbara, for that, that clear call to action. The name of your book again, it's not published yet. Is that what you said? Okay, just put it in
I
the
was
chat,
on mute.
Barbara.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's they're doing the editing now. It's called Deconstructing Racism,
Okay.
A Path to Lasting Change. So
Okay.
Fortress Press has it. So
Thank
hopefully
you.
it'll be out.
Well,
I'll let y'all know.
While I'm talking, do me a favor, just put it in the chat, okay? Just type it in the chat. All right. So, guys, you may have noticed we have a new Facebook page, Race Talk Revolution. We want you to stop by, like the page, please share it with your friends. We also gave our YouTube page a facelift. And so, we post these recordings every week. Please go by, like the videos, become a subscriber, help us to share and spread these very vital conversations. You guys show up for us in force. Everybody, we are all in this together. Thank you so much for making Race Talk a powerful engine for change in the community. We totally, it takes all of us, and your voice matters. Next week, our guest is going to be the Reverend Petra Toms. She's an advocate for the rights of Indigenous peoples and nations and the executive director of the Ramapo Lenape Community Center in Mahwah, New Jersey. She's also a Unitarian Universalist minister with a powerful anti-racist agenda. And she'll speak with us about the doctrine of discovery and how that document informed a tradition of white supremacy that has shaped our relationship to people of color in the United States. And so please, we will welcome her and we will welcome you all back. We love you. My partner, Eugene, handsome as ever. Upright brother. Barbara, thank you.
Thank
Please
you,
come
everyone.
back.
Thank you so very much.
Oh, thanks,
Thank you all
everybody.
for
Take
the
care and
support.
stay safe.
Thank you, Barbara.
All right. Bye, y'all.